Hi everyone. Okay, February 15th. This is the worst day of my whole life. It began well. Joseph Hannibal left the house this morning at last. I thought he'd sailed away on the evening tide and that would be the end of him. I was wrong. Billy has gone with him. Even as I write it, I can hardly believe it. Billy has gone. It all began just after Joseph Hannibal left. We've had arguments before, Billy and me, but never like this. He didn't seem a bit sad when I told him, at last, about Molly and her calf. He just said that I should have been there, or Mother, that it wasn't his fault. I got angry and shouted at him. Billy just shrugged and walked off. I hate it when he does that. I raced after him and grabbed him. He turned on me and told me I was taking Father's side against him. I knew then that it was all because of Joseph Hannibal. It's as if he split us apart. Billy thinks that everything about him is wonderful, that he's doing what a proper man should. He won't hear a word against him. This afternoon, Billy and Father had their expected set to about Molly, a set to meaning an argument. Father roared and, of course, Billy shouted back at him. He wasn't going to stay and be a cowman all his life. He had better things to be doing. I've never seen Billy like it. The angrier he became, the more he seemed to grow. Nose to nose in the kitchen, he was as big as Father. Father said he'd strap him if he didn't hold his tongue, and Billy just stared at him and said nothing, his eyes like steel. Mother came between them, and Billy stormed out. I followed him. We went to Rushy Bay, where we always go to talk when we don't want anyone else to hear. We sat on the sand together, and that was when he told me he'd been talking to Joseph Hannibal. Joseph Hannibal had asked the skipper of the General Lee, and the skipper had agreed Billy could join the ship as cabin boy. I'm going, Laura, Billy said. I was thinking about it all last night, and not just because of Father either. It's a big world out there, and I'm going to see it. This could be my only chance. And I could see that he meant it, that I couldn't argue him round. I tried all the same. I begged him to stay. I even said I'd go with him. He shook his head and looked away. I know Billy so well, better than he knows me, I think. Once he's made up his mind, there's no stopping him. I knew it was hopeless. He put his arm around me and told me he was sorry, that I'd be all right. He'd write to me, and when he comes back, he's going to bring me lots of things from America, from China, from the frozen north. When I cried, he hugged me very tight and said he'd go now, just as he was. He didn't want to have to go home again. You'll tell Mother, he said. You'll say goodbye for me. I walked in silence with him down past the church to the quay. We saw Father paring a hedge up in the field where Molly had died. Billy looked at him and said nothing. He was close to tears. He turned away. And say goodbye to Granny May too, he said. From the quayside, we looked across at St. Mary's and we could see the masts of the General Lee. Excuse me. She's a fine ship, he said. A fast ship. She'll take me all over the world, Joseph Hannibal said. He smoothed my hair and told me to go home without looking back. I cried all the way home, not so much because Billy was gone and I might never see him again, but because he didn't want me to go with him. This evening, from the top of Samson Hill, I watched the General Lee sail out past St. Agnes. Billy was right. She was a fine ship. I knew he'd be looking back at Briar, and he knew I'd be up on Samson Hill. I could feel his eyes on me. I shivered, not from cold, but because I knew then, as I know now, that I'll never see Billy again. Her sails were red in the last of the sun, as red as any blood. I said nothing till just before supper. when Mother asked where Billy was. I told her as gently as I knew how. She sat down and her eyes were suddenly empty of life. "No," she whispered, and that was all. Father was working late in the boathouse. He came in a few minutes ago. I was sitting on the stairs when she told him. "You drove him away," she said, shaking her head. You shouldn't have. "He'll be back," said Father. "You'll see." Mother turned away from him. She didn't believe him, and neither do I. Excuse me. Here's a picture of Briar and the harbour. July 21st. My house is not my home anymore. It's a place I live in. Mother and Father are strangers to each other. Billy has been gone for over 4 months now. There's been no letter, no word. We scarcely ever speak of him. It's as if he never lived. I went to his room this morning and found Mother sitting on his bed, staring at the wall, rocking back and forth. She had his blue jersey on her lap. I went and sat beside her. She tried to smile but couldn't. She hasn't smiled since Billy left. I do the morning milking on my own now. That's when I most miss Billy. I talk to the cows and they listen. Maybe they understand too. I hope so. They're not milking at all well. I think perhaps they're missing Billy like everyone else. They aren't eating properly either. Their coats are staring. And they're not licking themselves. They're just not how they should be. I don't know that expression. Their coats are staring. It's obviously it's a farming term. I'm going to have to look that up. I didn't look up mizzenmast either. I need to check this. July 30th. In church today, I was listening to the vicar. It was as if he was speaking just to me. He said we mustn't hope for anything at all in this life, only in the next life. I think I understand what he means. You only get disappointed if you hope. Every night, like tonight, when I finished this, I lie in the darkness, when I finish this, meaning her diary, I lie in the darkness and hope and pray that Billy will come back. I pray out loud just in case God can't hear me hoping. And every morning, as soon as I wake up, I go to the window and hope to see him running up the path. But each day he isn't there, makes even hoping more hopeless. July 31st. Even my other hope has come to nothing. I hoped that with Billy gone, I might at last be allowed to take his place in the gig. I finally plucked up courage enough to ask the chief. He said I had to ask Father. I waited until he was doing the evening milking. He's always gentler when he's up with the cows. He was with Rosie in the barn. There's something wrong with these cows, he said, without looking up. Hardly a bucketful between the lot of them. They go on like this, we're in real trouble. Real trouble. They've not been right, none of them. Not since Billy left. None of us have. His eyes were filled with tears when he looked up at me. Mother's right, he said. It was my fault Billy went away. No, it wasn't, I said. It was Joseph Hannibal. It was only half the truth, and Father knew it. He went back to his milking. I asked him then what I'd come to ask him. I knew I shouldn't, but I had to. He was on his feet at once, shouting at me. Rosie kicked out in alarm and the bucket went over. Is that all you ever think about? He roared. Your brother's run off to sea. Every cow I've got is sick. It's these cows put food on your belly, girl. You know that. I knew that. Of course I knew that. They die, we die. They're all we've got. And you come fussing to me about the gig. How many times have I told you? There's never been a girl rowed out in the gig. Not on this island, not on any island. And you'll not be the first, do you hear me? I ran off with him, still shouting after me. I never thought I could think it. I never thought I could write it. But I hate my father. Here she is talking to Dad. So this is written in 1907. Sorry, the story takes place in 1907. So times were very different then, and it was, you know, unfair for girls. They couldn't do the things that boys could do. August 23rd. I'm just going to stop there actually. That's the end of part 1.